A Texas agency is threatening to fire employees if they wear clothing that is not consistent with their birth genitalia. This is, I mean, listen, we we've started to suspect that the transphobic movement of the right, enmeshed with the MAGA right, is really overplaying its hand with the anti-woke stuff. The polling suggests that the country is far more woke than these anti-wokesters want to pretend. It doesn't seem like this is a way to win elections, and yet they will not stop. This is the latest. It's probably illegal, but we will get to that in a moment. Vice News reports Texas agency threatens to fire people who don't dress, quote, consistent with their biological gender. The internal department memo is just the latest attempt by state officials in Texas to crack down on trans and gender nonconforming people. This is the Texas Department of Agriculture. Their mission is to promote production, agriculture, consumer protection, economic development, and healthy living, and apparently the gender binary, writes Vice News. This is a memo distributed last week saying you are required to dress in a manner, quote, consistent with your biological gender. The memo, obviously aimed at trans and gender nonconforming employees, says if you repeatedly dress the wrong way, there will be, quote, corrective action up to and including being fired. Think about that. This is, and the article says, the latest attempt by state officials to crack down on trans people. Let's discuss a couple of aspects of this. First of all, could this possibly be legal? My opinion, which is not my legal opinion, but that of legal experts whose opinions I've read, is that it is not legal. Now, anytime we say, is this legal, and there isn't precedent, we're all just speculating. It's very important to understand that if it's not already written into the law, and if there is no precedent, all we have is a speculation where we try to apply whatever law does exist to the facts of the case. In this situation, could you fire people or even just mandate that they dress consistent with their biological gender? Could it possibly be legal? The best legal assessments I've seen suggest almost certainly not. You've got Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employment discrimination, I think we would say, on the basis of sex. Now, that includes banning discrimination against people who don't conform to traditional gender norms. So this means as an employer, you wouldn't be allowed to discriminate against employees based on their gender identity nor their gender expression. And certainly the way you dress is part of your gender expression. We also have a June 2020 Supreme Court ruling in Bostock v. Clayton County, which specifically found Title VII's protections against sex discrimination do extend to sexual orientation as well as gender identity. And so that ruling, if we understand it, establishes that firing someone on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation would be illegal. Now, some of the defenders of this policy will say, you're allowed to identify as any gender you want, but you've got to dress a certain way. So they would say this isn't a violation of any law, because if you're a biological male, you're allowed to identify as a woman. You're just not allowed to wear dresses or skirts or high heels or I guess whatever else in 2023 in Texas is determined to be consistent with gender norms. Realistically, I believe that courts would find apparel is an expression of that gender identity. Makeup is an expression of gender identity, and therefore it would be protected, assuming it is not obscene. That's the other aspect of this that sometimes the transphobes will go to. They'll say, well, obscenity isn't protected. Well, it's going to be very difficult to argue that a biological male wearing a dress, to think of the prototypical example, is in any way obscene. It would be very difficult to make that case legally. So that is the legal question. I think, based on everything I've read, almost certainly would be illegal. Then there is the question of whether politically they are overplaying their hand. And I believe there the answer is yes. When you actually ask people their views on There was recently a very good poll which asked people questions like, for example, have we done, when it comes to protecting and recognizing the circumstances of trans people and their concerns, have we done enough, the right amount, or not enough? The polling comes down on thinking that we have done about the right amount or not enough when it comes to protecting trans people. That's the woke view on that issue. And so the polling suggests that their hand is being overplayed. And then the third aspect I guess I will mention is, who cares about this stuff to the degree that you actually are bothered and think about it? I tweeted about this earlier. You know, this is a true story. Yesterday, I was out working at a cafe. I was doing research for today's show. I'm sitting there on my laptop. And all of a sudden, a guy walks by me wearing high heels, wearing a men's suit, a traditional men's haircut, everything. He's got a men's shoulder bag and high heels. And I looked over, and I really looked over, and I said to myself, wait a second, I should really double check one of these sources I'm looking at. And I went back to my business, and it had no impact on me whatsoever. If I had been there with my baby daughter, I wouldn't have been at all concerned that a guy walked by in high heels. How is it that people have even convinced themselves that this is a significant issue in their lives? Just let people do what they want to do. There's no crime, there's no obscenity, there's no any of it. So I think the Texas Department of Agriculture overplaying their hand politically, probably against the law, and also just shows you must not have much going on in your life if this is something that you're concerned with.